Please welcome John Gable of Allside, Vice Admiral Alvin Holsey of the Southern Command, and Andrea Villagrán of the Republic of Guatemala.
Well, welcome everybody. There's going to be another panel, I think, that deals with some of the issues of democracy and keeping democracy vibrant and live. I'm going to do a quick little introduction for each of us, but it's really going to be more about them. So each of us works with democracy in different ways. I'm John Gable with All Sides. We deal with misinformation and media bias and help in large and small ways, companies and individuals and NGOs and governments deal with those problems, the filter bubbles, so that we can have a more effective democracy, so people can talk with each other and listen to each other. And that's nothing compared to what these people do. That's soft skills. These are really hard issues around democracy, about security, about the rule of law, about a whole region having to cooperate with each other to succeed in those areas. So I'm going to do a very poor introduction. Please do look at the materials you have, because they both have very extensive resumes. But Vice Admiral Alvin Holsey.
Yes.
Holsey. I'm going to wimp out on her name because I'm from Kentucky. I can't speak English hardly. The Vice Admiral, he just became a Vice Admiral in January. From Fort Valley, Georgia, NRTC, Masters in Management, flew helicopters on a variety of different ships, actually led the first hybrid electric warship,
yes,
which as a technology person, I find fascinating, but has dealt with the free flow of commerce and navigation in the Middle East, leading the International Maritime Security Construct. And actually did a little bit of work with the Joint Chief of Staff, and is now the military deputy commander of the U.S. Southern Command, or Southcom. Why don't you describe a little bit about Southcom and fill in the important things I know I left out?
Well, thank you, John. Good morning, and I'm really pleased to be here with Congressman Villagrán as well. At U.S. Southern Command, we are one of the 6 geographic combatant commanders for the Department of Defense. So in that role, we're responsible for overseeing the contingency planning operations, as well as the security cooperation in the Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. In our neighborhood, we like to say, and we refer to it as our neighborhood because of the physical proximity, the shared values and culture, and also the shared economic and security concerns.
Okay, and then let's do a quick introduction for Congresswoman Andrea, and say your last name.
Andrea Villagrán.
My apologies for not being better at that. From Guatemala City, degree in political science, specializing in decentralized cooperation, and a great deal. She was actually entering your 3rd term or about to, hopefully, enter your 3rd term in the Parliament, but was actually the youngest woman ever to serve in Guatemala in Congress, and has done a great deal about democracy, and particularly in keeping that vital and revitalized. Could you speak a little bit to that and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, also I'm really pleased to be here with you all, and also I am part of the McCain Global Leaders for the McCain Institute, which I'm really proud of. And as a young leader, I think it's really important to focus on the problems that our country is facing. In case of Guatemala, is fighting corruption. So that's one of my main agenda is basically fighting corruption and defending women's rights.
So let's start with the Vice Admiral, and let's make it a little bit open at first. And what do you think are the most important concerns that we actually are dealing with, or your particular Southcom are dealing with today?
So thanks for that question as well. So first of all, I'd like to share that Southcom has been building partnerships in this region now for close to 60 years. And if you were to look at our mission statement, 2 things that really stand out: rapidly responding to crises, and then building partner capacity, regional capacity. So how do we do that? We do it through security cooperation. Security cooperation is a way that we engage with our partners by and large. Now, how do we do that? It goes back to the fact of foreign military sales, foreign military financing, security assistance, funding as well. And so by doing that, we're able to engage and build partner capacity. That's very important as you look at different threats in the region. So as we assist partners in developing that military capability, what that does for us, and at the same time, we stick with them, we don't just go away, we gotta be on the field and engage, right? So we assist them with training, the necessary training to do the sustainment and maintenance, and by doing that, and again, on the field, engage with our partners, building that trust, we're able to enable them to counter that malign activity. And so that's kind of the main focus right now, security cooperation.
Congresswoman, speaking about Guatemala specifically, but also there are such interesting relationships with the whole region. To describe a little bit more how you're approaching that.
Well, I would say that the main threats that we have for our security, basically drug trafficking, organized crime, and common crime. And the main problem that we have is that our institutions don't have the capacity to address those problems. And that can go in two ways. One is that, of course, is the technical assistance, is to have the equipment, is to have the resources. But for the other side is the political willing, which is, I think, is the most important, because we have received a lot of help from the U.S. Trying to make strong institutions to respond. But I want to say that it's really important to have a political willing to do what it has to do. And that is, and for me, one of the main problems then is corruption and impunity. Because corruption, if we have a political elite, a corrupt political elite that negotiates, that cooptated the justice system, and that negotiates with local governments and establish the roots of narco-traffic, and that if that happens, they don't have a sense of consequences because they basically have the judges by themselves. So that's really important for us to have, not have impunity, to fight against that, and to ensure the rule of law. And that affects also democracy, because the state is not responding, the state cannot respond to the threats because it's responding to them. And if it's responding to them, it's not responding to the people. And that is when democracy starts it's like in a crisis, because people is not seeing the state is responding to their needs. And I think in that moment is that when we have to do better things to take out and maintain the fight against corruption, to take it away, because if we keep like that, there is no chance that the state that we have a real security from the state, a strong one.
So working with the U.S. and others, what's the most important thing we can do, or we can do together, or you can do to really solve that problem? Because you're right, if the people up front really don't believe in democracy, which politically hungry people don't really believe in, what is the major action we should be taking?
Well, I think the U.S. can do a lot of things, and one is that is already doing, and I think it has to continue doing, is to reject that criminal political corruption that is going on, that elite that is taking control of the institutions and take away from the people's needs. And one of the things that I want to mention is that for Guatemala, irregular immigration is not a security problem. It is the consequence of a state that cannot respond to their people. Yeah. It becomes a problem on matters of security, international levels, to the U.S. because the weakness of our institutions affects the security of the United States. But it is not for us a security problem. So I think we have to address two things. In the political way, we have to keep the fight against corruption, and in the economic side, we have to create those opportunities. So it's really important to have the investments, to help in development, to continue with it. So in that moment, we will have people that won't don't want to leave the country because they will find a future. But we have now is that people don't believe in democracy, and that's increasing, and the flows of people are growing every time. And the reason is a problem of development. It's not a problem of security, basically.
Interesting. So for Southcom, I mean, we're talking about, Congressman was talking about economics and politics, but obviously if there's a certain level of security that's not there, all those things fall apart. How do you see Southcom and working with these relationships, how we can help countries like Guatemala for democracy?
So a couple of things I'll look at is what's going to enable those key things, interoperability, enhanced domain awareness, enhanced readiness, and going down those things. The things that do that for us, in our case, when we're working with our partner nations, are our joint exercise program. That's the most return on investment. When we look at our joint exercise program, which we do all the time, it provides that outsized, if you will, investment to encourage and increase the readiness, as well as strengthening our partners throughout the region, strengthen those partnerships. So what that does, that's pushed back off malign activity. So let me share with you. So over the course of a year, we generally do 8 multinational joint exercises, pulling in all the partner nations, bringing allies together to look at these key security concerns, and also being able to respond to disaster relief efforts, right? So we're trying to make sure our partners have the capability and the capacity to work with us and get after that. So 2 exercises I'll mention I think is very important. One is the trade winds exercise, which happens, in fact, this year, it's 23 partner nations have been invited. You have, it's going to be hosted by Guyana, and it's going to be a multinational, all-domain exercise where we get a chance to practice HADR and in a security operations. So again, it's building that capacity and building that teamwork, getting those reps and sets, we like to say in the military. The second one I think is very powerful as well is UNITAS. And that's actually a Navy exercise. It's been around for over 60 plus years. And I'm not just a fan of that because I'm a Navy man, but it helps, right? But that exercise as well, again, all domain, multinational, bringing partners and allies together to look at those hard security concerns. And this time we're actually going to test do a contested environment, how we get after those threats that we see on the horizon. And again, bringing the teams together to get after those, I think is very powerful. In fact, I would say that our exercise program in general is a great understanding or a segue into what we call integrated deterrence. So again, think about all domain, bringing in the interagency, bringing in our NGOs, bringing in allies and partners to increase readiness, increase interoperability, increase that cyber support, and then if you think about it in the end, what it's going to do is build that capacity, that capability, that confidence, and I think more importantly, it builds a trust. The trust we need in our partners. The partners know that we're there, right? We want to be there. We're looking for those like-minded countries, those democracies, who are looking for opportunities, and we want to make sure we're there. So through our joint exercise program, through our security cooperation, that's how we're reaching out, and we will continue to do that.
I'm thinking about democracies and how fear is the greatest threat to democracies, and reducing the danger of security risks. But there seems to be a growth, and I don't know actually, of illicit actors. Are these the steps that you're describing? Are there other things we should be doing to head that off, or is this just kind of do a little bit more of that because it's the great relationships that you're building that seem to deliver the best results?
So that's a great point, right? So I would share with you that General Richardson just got a chance to go before Congress just a couple of days ago. Her key point continues to be our relationship with our partners, the security cooperation, again, those joint exercises. We have to be engaged on the ground, working with our partners. And when they see that, they know that we're there. And we're not there just to do a touch point. We don't want to just pop in and leave. We want to make sure we're there, committed, and they see that. So when you think about building partnerships, building those relationships, it's got to mean something, right? So again, when General Richardson can pick up the phone and call a chief of defense, or call an ambassador, and engage, it makes a difference.
Okay. Congresswoman, so for the integrated defense and deterrence approach, is that affecting your foreign policy? Is that affecting the way you do things internally in Guatemala and how you feel about things?
Well, I think that's really important because sharing information between the countries of the region, having joint task forces, most important, but the information in order to react to a situation immediately is I think, is one of the main things of these interactions. But I will say again that we have to have a willing, the political willing is needed, because if we don't, we can share the information, but if the information gets late, we will not be able to solve the problem. So we have to work in several stuff. It's trading democracy, but that means it's trading institutions. If we have police and the military involved in corruption because the heads are involved in corruption, we wouldn't be able to address them because they respond to those threats, which are the organized crime and the drug trafficking, basically.
Are there other things that the U.S. or others in the region, through the bilateral relationships you have, can do, whether it's military or otherwise, to really help you combat those issues?
Well, we as a nation, we have a lot to do, obviously, a lot. And that means that we have to rescue the state. We have the 3 R's, rescue, we have to rebuild the institutions, and we have to be able to respond to the situation. But in the way that we get more development opportunities for people to get out of poverty, have a better access of job opportunities, have more income, and be able to have better education, I think people start voting more rational sometimes, and also elect people that is not involved in corruption. And this is like a big problem right now that we are facing. We are really close to electoral process, and we see a lot of people from narco-traffic cartels running, and it's not a secret. It's been people that is being in jail here in United States because of drug trafficking. There is run for a member of Congress. There are even members of Congress that are over there and that are being requested by the U.S. from narco-traffic. And as long as we do not address those things, if we don't reject the criminal political elite, we will not be able to. So I think maybe talking about citizen and private society, I think by private sector, it will help more to build a better citizens, strong citizens, because now, to be honest, we have a lot of people that is under the line of poverty, 60% of the people. And most of them want to leave the country because they don't see a future, and they want to come here because we are close. But also we are seeing that in other cases, also in the middle class that have access to education, university, and now they want to leave the country because they don't see a future. And that's really sad to say, and we have to keep fighting against that. The main problem is, as I was saying, corruption, because the funding of the political parties comes from these threats, and we have to be able to stop that. And the U.S. is a privileged partner from us in development. So I think the effort that the U.S. is doing is great, and it can be better.
You mentioned the private sector. We only have 2 more minutes. I'll hold myself back. It seems like that's an opportunity to balance out, because you have kind of the external military security threats, a great deal of support there, but the economic support you need, and that's probably going to come more, I'm guessing, from the relationships with the private sector than with the government that may or may not be always on the up and up. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think the private sector has more opportunities even than the government. In the previous panel, I recall something that they were saying, that even if the government will pass, the private sector will stay. So if the private sector also help politicians that we are trying to do something good or something that is good for the nation, but we are not that many, unfortunately. We need more, and we need the help of the entire society with the people that wants to make the changes in our country.
Okay, so I'd like to ask both of you in just a little bit of time, thinking forward, we're here 5 years from now. What do you think, what do you hope to be able to say, or what do you think will be the new challenges then? Vice Admiral.
I'll share with you that our vision of this Western Hemisphere is a secure, free, and prosperous environment. I think we have to continue to provide the security cooperation build those relationships. One of the key things we do is this international military education and training, where we bring partners, nations over to mid-level and service, senior service colleges, and we forge in those relationships. Some of those folks go back and become chiefs of defense, senior admirals and generals in the militaries. We have to make sure we continue to reach out and look for those like-minded countries or like-minded democracies and build those relationships. Thank you.
Congressman.
Well, first I want to say that I am the first generation of my country that was born in democracy. There was previously was a war and an authority governments. And I think that in 5 years, I hope to see my generation taking those positions of decision making and defending democracy. I wish and I hope to see that in 5 years that there is a new political class that defends democracy, because we cannot allow to live anything better than democracy.
Thank you. And something that should be said to not just the military, which is traditional, but also to political people with integrity, is thank you both for your service, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Thanks.